There it goes. All right, thank you for coming. This is solid waste training that Lakes Region Planning Commission hosts. We work with a USDA solid waste management grant so that we can help technically assist our communities, get you guys training that's relevant for our area, and help you with improving transfer stations, help you with funding pursuits, and anything else to do with the solid waste field that you guys might encounter throughout, your working careers. This training is gonna be for the full 2.5 hours, so New Hampshire DES every year requires 2.5 hours of training. So by doing this one training, it's one and done. You're gonna get the whole entire 2.5 hours that you can submit to Tara Albert when you guys go to recertify. Again, I asked you guys to make sure you guys got a certificate. That's what DES is going to ask from you to recertify. So if you have somebody in your town office that holds this paperwork for you, get that paperwork over to them with your name on it so that they have it for a record and they can reference it when you go to recertify again, okay? Is there any questions on recertifying and paperwork involved and any of that kind of stuff? Okay, great. So again, thank you for coming. We have Brian and Andrea from NRRA today that is our guest speaker. We're gonna talk about basically recycling 101. We're gonna talk about full cost accounting, so the accounting involved with managing a solid waste transfer station. And then I will talk a little bit about research that I did in 2024 for solid waste in the Lakes region in general. A couple revenue generator techniques that we found that's been successful in our region, and some scale talk too, because I get a lot of questions about scales and how much it costs and what it takes to put a scale into the transfer station. So that's what the training is going to be about today. So I will hand it off to our guest speakers to start it out. And I guess Andrea will start talking.
I will start talking. All right, let me actually present this. Ta-da. All right, so I'm Andrea Folsom. I am the communications manager with the Northeast Resource Recovery Association. This is Brian. He is our member services manager. If you have ever been in contact with us, you've probably talked to Brian. If you've ever read anything that we've sent out, you've read stuff that I wrote. Is anyone, are you guys familiar at all with NRRA? Yeah, okay, great. So we'll go through. This is what we'll be talking about today. So just a little bit about who we are, and then we're gonna break down recycling and solid waste, both at the national and the state level. Talk about some of the issues that you guys might be encountering, and some possible solutions and next steps. So I'm gonna be giving sort of the recycling 101 overview portion, and then Brian's gonna be talking about the nitty-gritty stuff. So just quickly, NRRA, this is who we are, except Stacy is not here anymore. So if you ever knew Stacy, she's lovely, but she went on to bigger and better things at a different organization. But anytime we take a picture of ourselves, somebody leaves. So this is the best that I could do. We are the largest and oldest cooperative model recycling nonprofit in the country, which is pretty cool. And we mostly serve small rural communities in New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, a little bit in Maine, Connecticut. So 90% of municipalities in New Hampshire are NRRA members. Our impact, working with all of our communities, we have over 440 members. We helped them manage 76.9 million pounds of material last year. That was both through recycling and some MSW. Close that door. By managing that waste, we helped avoid 211 million pounds of carbon dioxide emissions, like removing over 20,000 cars from the road from a year, which is cool. But the even bigger numbers, we returned $2.21 million back to our members by helping them find outlets for their recycling. All right, so I wanted to just start with what's in the trash nationwide. These are all, this is from the EPA from 2018. People ask, why is this so old? Well, that's the last time the EPA did this kind of analysis. So this is the most recent information we have. So you can see that our trash is a lot of things that could be diverted. So 34% of stuff that ends up in trash right now could be composted, and 48% could theoretically be recycled. I say theoretically because this is gonna include stuff like plastics, which is in everything. It's in these chairs that you're sitting in, it's in, you know, the ceiling. You can't recycle really these chairs or the ceiling. So that's why I say theoretically, it could be recycled. Another interesting look at our waste is what's happening to it. So where does our waste go? So some areas like paper, we're doing really well with recycling. So the light green is recycling, the dark green is like composting or food management or diversion. Dark red is waste to energy, so incineration to get electricity, and light red is just landfilled. So some areas like paper, we are recycling a lot. That doesn't necessarily mean that your residents are bringing in a ton of paper to recycle. A lot of that is, you know, like newspapers, they cut off the ends of the newspapers, the paper falls to the floor, they recycle that. So that's all considered recycling, which it is, but it's not consumer recycling. Other areas are doing terrible, like plastics, where you can see that most plastic and food waste are ending up in landfills where they sit basically forever. You know, stuff, especially like food, if you throw away a head of lettuce and it goes to your landfill, you dig up that head of lettuce in 25 years, it will still look like a head of lettuce. It's not gonna break down. Ooh, you try. It might. All right, so that was the sort of our big picture look nationwide. So looking at solid waste in New Hampshire, this is just sort of our breakdown. We have 6 landfills in New Hampshire. 3 are public, which means that basically they'll accept waste from anywhere. 3 are limited service areas, so they'll only accept waste from their smaller areas. We have 1 waste to energy incinerator, that's the Wheelabrator in Concord. NRRA actually did a bus tour for operators 2 years ago now, and we got to go check it out, which was very cool. You guys probably know this fact, but it's always surprising to people that 50% of waste that's landfilled in New Hampshire comes from out of state. Most of it is coming from Massachusetts. We do send a little bit of our own waste also across the border. Usually they're like border towns with Vermont. But it's still a really big issue right now that a lot of the trash that's being thrown away in New Hampshire is not from New Hampshire. We also have the turnkey landfill of Rochester, which is the largest landfill in New England. And with that comes, you know, everything with a landfill, there comes, you know, leachate, which is the kind of watery runoff, which is not great. There's some environmental, like air pollution. You know, I know that they do their best, but the reality is we have the largest landfill right here in our fairly small state. Yeah. And then we have no material recovery facilities, and we have no anaerobic digesters. So a MRF, a material recovery facility, is if you have single stream recycling, like everything goes into one bin, that can't be processed in New Hampshire. It has to be transported out of state, and it goes to one of these MRFs where they are able to sort the recycling both through mechanical and physically people sorting it. What that means is that single source recycling is real expensive because you have to transport it, and transportation costs are huge. We also do not have an anaerobic digester that's used for composting, well, not really composting, for breaking down food waste. And again, it means that it just makes it harder and more expensive for us to get food waste out of our landfills. All right, so I'm cruising right through today. And if you have any questions, you can just stop me and ask.
So why don't they build one of them MRIs, so is it too expensive?
No, that's a great question. We've asked several times. Basically, there's not enough recycling created in the state for them to be financially viable. We are still, we definitely still support it and would love for, like Casella has said a couple times, like maybe they'll make one. But, yeah, they go by the bottom dollar and unfortunately, it hurts municipalities. Okay, so statewide look. Oh, this is a little interactive thing. So what percentage of communities in New Hampshire have their own municipal recycling facility? This is a little raise your hand situation. So how many people think it is 72%? How many people think it is 85%? How about 91%?
Go 72.
Okay, 72, 91, 85%. So, we have a state law that says that every single town, no matter your size, you either have to have a recycling facility or transfer station, or you have to provide access to one. So that means that a lot of really small towns have to have their own transfer stations, and they are very small transfer stations. Some don't have bathrooms, some don't have phones or electricity. Yep. Seems like we have.
Electricity.
Yeah.
So here's a question, what are you considering a municipal recycling facility? Is it a transfer station in general, or is it like actual baling and recycling and storage?
It would just need to be a transfer it's somewhere where waste and recycling can go, and it can be transferred then somewhere else to be baled, like a lot of places, not a lot, but and you can jump in as well, not all places have the space for a baler.
Right.
Balers are also expensive, so.
We have quite a few towns that will throw paper in like an open top and then ship it to another facility where they bail it.
Okay.
All right. Another question we get is, so what's happening to our recycling? Is it all being sent out of state? Is it all being sent, across the ocean? So no, a lot of our recycling does happen within the states, especially in 2016. Countries like China said, we're not gonna take your recycling anymore. And so that really forced the US to start creating more, more paper mills, more processing facilities. In New Hampshire, we recycle electronics down in Dover. Those are mostly the big old televisions is what they do. And then we have cardboard processing in Claremont. So there is some that is processed in New Hampshire. Obviously, the closer you're able to process your material, the less cost to you, because you don't have to transport it as far. Very on that one.
No, as I said, unfortunately, most of everything has to be shipped out of state. Plastics, for example, one of the biggest expenses for plastic is there's no nearby facility. So a lot of the plastic goes up to Canada, goes over to Michigan, Pennsylvania, depending on the material. So like 1 through 7 plastic goes down to Pennsylvania, processed at that facility. They separate it, they take the number 2 HDPE natural, use it to make furniture. They separate everything else and then ship it to another facility. So it's really, unfortunately, once again, infrastructure in New Hampshire is not there.
Is there an aftermarket for components off of circuit boards that go to this electronics place and have an aftermarket availability, or is that that goes away? I mean, because circuit boards used to be copper clad. Well, I'm not copper clad anymore, but there are copper clad. And there's glass inside. So, but the components that sit in these boards is soldering circuit boards plus the components. Some people do aftermarket components. I was just curious, does the processing plant go to do that, or is that all destroyed?
No, I mean, they really strip those down to their individual, and they do try to recycle most of everything, because if they can get any kind of heavy metals or any kind of precious metals off of those, they're gonna wanna do that. They grind them up and they put it through a whole bunch of chemical separators to separate out all.
But they're not gonna do anything, they're not doing anything with the components that are on the circuit boards, what you're telling me.
So, yes, they do, it's not much anymore,
Okay,
because technology is just changing so quick, and the aftermarket is just horrible. And it also, as we get more regulated in the industry, for them, it's not almost worth spending the time.
the story, go through.
Exactly, unfortunately. So the two big things is, the processor in a computer and the memory stick. And those are very easy to get to, very easy to test. Anything else, it's besides like maybe some of the medical equipment,
Mhm.
you know, it's most everything else is just shredded
Yeah.
and then recycled.
Thank you.
Great, awesome. All right, so moving right along, looking at a much more local look at recycling. And some of this is, the presentation we're giving you today is part of our general recycling 101 presentation, which is designed for residents. And part of it is to get them to recycle more. So we like to focus on the money. So if you like money, try recycling. Nobody likes paying taxes. They don't have to. And recycling is a way that folks can decrease how much MSW your town is creating. And especially with the markets somewhat rebounding, I mean, our markets, they go up and down, gaining revenue from the sale of recyclables to help offset some of the costs of running a transfer station or recycling facility is always welcome. All right, so one recycling example that we love to share with folks are aluminum cans. So why are aluminum cans kind of the darling of recyclables? But you can recycle them forever. They don't degrade when you process them. 75% of the aluminum that's in use today has been in use like from the beginning of, you know, when they were mining and processing aluminum, which is pretty cool. Saves money, it's cheaper to recycle aluminum than to create new aluminum, and it saves energy. So these are just some examples of why recycling would be better than just pitching stuff. Another question that I wonder if you guys get, I know we get it a lot, is, well, I heard that the town next door, or my friend's town, or they live wherever, and they can recycle blah, blah, blah. Why can't we recycle whatever it is? And so this is sort of the long answer. We like to say just because it is recyclable doesn't mean it's processable. So what does that mean? It means, do you have the amount? Number 5, plastics, yeah, it's recyclable. If you're only getting a tiny bit, no one is going to take that. It's not gonna be worth the time and money to transport it. You're not gonna make any money on that. So you need an economy of scale. Location, where are you located? Where's the processing facility located? Sort of what we were talking about. If you have to ship something to Pennsylvania and you only have a little bit of it, it's gonna be more expensive, unfortunately, than just throwing it away. And then costs, what are the markets doing? Markets are markets, they go up and down. Sometimes it's gonna cost more to recycle than to throw stuff away. And that is a decision that towns have to make. We all have budget. And even though we would like to recycle everything that can be recycled, sometimes it is so expensive, you just can't. You know, we had an example of a town that had been recycling paper. The location where they sent the paper stopped accepting. Their price went from what, like $30 a ton to like $650 a ton that they were paying to get rid of their paper, far more than their MSW tipping charge. So they stopped recycling paper for a while, because they just, financially, they just couldn't do it. So those are just some of the reasons. other questions, you know, we'll get it with like clamshells, like when your berries or salad comes in. Some places, if they do single stream recycling, they're able to recycle those because they send them out of state to a MRF that has a larger amount of stuff, so they are able to recycle those. Here in New Hampshire, we just don't have enough. And we don't have the processing facilities close to us. All right. So just a quick note on contamination. So when we talk about contamination, what we mean is stuff that ends up in your recyclables that isn't supposed to be there. So that is, it's a picture of Sam pointing out some contamination. She found a red Solo cup that was in some, a peat load, it looks like.
Aluminum cans.
Oh, it's aluminum cans, is it?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, it is aluminum cans, couldn't see it from that angle. They're really not supposed to be there. So this is some good news about source separated recycling. And so when I say source separated, I mean, you know, the resident comes in and separates it all themselves versus single or dual stream where it goes into one or just two containers. Contamination is actually pretty low with source separated. Some places, you know, residents put it on a table and then you guys can filter through and make sure it isn't contaminated. Where I live, we just like chuck stuff into a giant pile, and then our operators have to pick it out, which seems less fun. Single and dual stream, it's harder to monitor, because people are just throwing everything into one bin. There's a lot of like, this is plastic on it, so like probably it could be recycled, even though it can't be. So you do see more contamination. If you have contamination, it might mean that like they'll have to throw out a whole bale, or it'll just cost you more money to try to recycle that stuff. Oh, this one's fun. Okay, so this is just when people say like, what is my stuff recycled into? It's just sort of neat to see what things become. So paperboard can become backing for shingles, it can turn back into paperboard. Same with junk mail, and magazines. They just turn more into paper again. Cardboard turns into cardboard. It can also turn into paperboard or brown paper bags. Places that it's not as common anymore, but if you separate computer paper, that can be turned into paper towels or toilet paper, Kleenex, or new computer paper. Aluminum, or steel and tin cans can become rebar or parts for appliances, and obviously turn back into cans, bike parts. Aluminum cans generally turn back into aluminum cans. It's pretty self-explanatory.
I'll
Yeah.
just step in quickly.
Yeah.
Right now, tin cans, the majority of the tin cans that are in the US are going as a fuel for these electric arc furnaces to create more steel. And that's one reason why last year the price started going up for the steel cans.
Yeah. Glass, when recycled, can turn back into new glass products. It can also be turned into, like a glass aggregate. That's what that sand pile is supposed to be, or fiberglass insulation. And then plastic can turn into like all sorts of stuff. It can be stadium seating, which I think is fun, carpeting, new plastic things. If you have plastic that is either white or natural, that can turn into more things. If you have plastic that is black, that can turn into black plastic. That's all it can turn into because it can't be dyed anymore.
Why does our place, we take the caps off the plastic? What is the requirement? Why don't the caps, there's a number of plastic, they can't process the caps within that?
Now, the majority of the recycling facilities can recycle the caps as long as they're still
On the container?
on the container. If they're off the container, they just go through their screen. But for most places, they can get recycled now. A lot of places don't do it because if they bale it could make their bales a little lighter. Not much, but still a little lighter and every pound counts. Another reason is if caps can stay on, it's more likely that the residents will drop off a soda bottle with soda still in it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, not only that, but when you are bailing out sometimes with the cap on, it won't pop off or anything.
Yeah.
But it'll leave that air pocket inside the bale.
Yeah.
So it just blows the bale apart later on.
Yeah.
That's why I took the caps off.
Is there any kind of like, separate recycling for bottle caps at all?
there used to be a program through one of our plastic vendors where everybody knows what a Gaylord is. You could Gaylord your plastic caps. I saw that. And you could actually ship them loose and they could process it separately. That went away. As newer technology comes out, especially what they call advanced recycling, which is chemical recycling, it'll be easier to process, it's not quite there yet.
Okay, so recycling next steps. So, talked a little bit about this already, but the recycling challenges that New Hampshire itself faces is solid waste disposal is expensive. It's the most expensive place in the country to throw away your trash. New England, we have the highest tipping costs in the country. We have a lack of state support. We just don't have the grants or the technical assistance, or state level policies to help support recycling and solid waste management. It really is one of the reasons that our organization exists is because of the lack of state support. So what we do is what you would find in other states that their state would be doing. And then as we've talked about, there's just a lack of infrastructure. Aside from having the largest landfill, we really lack infrastructure to divert waste in an effective and cost-effective way. So solutions, so we like solutions. So there's the New Hampshire Solid Waste Working Group that started in 2022. Our executive director sits on that group, and they are actually able to take a look at all the solutions and propose some policy changes that would actually be helpful for our state and our residents. Some things that have been considered are a bottle bill. Bottle bill has come up in our legislature every year for the past 14 years and it's never passed. So we'll just leave that at that. That would be, getting a little bit of money back when you return your glass bottles. There are extended producer responsibility laws and policies. They are really looking at these now, because right now, your town, your municipality has to pay to deal with your recycling. What an EPR does, it takes that cost and it shifts it onto the people who made the products. So they made the product, they now get to help pay for getting rid of the product and not leaving that financial burden on residents and towns. And then waste bans. So in New Hampshire, we have a yard waste ban. We have some additional waste bans that made it through the legislature this year. There's one for commercial food waste producers, that'd be huge places like universities they won't be allowed to throw their food waste away into a landfill or incinerator. If they have a food waste diversion, like composting or processing plant, within like 20 miles from them, but we lack infrastructure, so we don't have that. So it's a big, huge mess.
So that's not, so even state universities and colleges aren't into that at all, that are being supported by the state?
So the law says that they will have to do something with it if they have a processor within 20 miles. If they don't have a processor within 20 miles, they don't have to.
When will that law take effect? I know it's 2025.
2025.
Do we have a month?
No, so right now, the state is doing, they don't, the state does not actually know who makes enough waste to have to, take part in this new law. So you have to make at least a ton of food waste a week, yeah, I'm like, dang, a week. They don't know who that is yet. And they're not, I don't even think they've started looking at that. Right now, the state is just trying to look at what even is in our garbage. So that's what they're starting with. Then they'll look at food waste. But once they know
Yeah.
who needs to do it, then they'll be able to implement it. So technically, it starts in 2025. We are following this. So you can sign up for our newsletter and we'll let you know when it finally hits.
I got one more question on it, cause I've spent a great deal of time on the internet trying to find any information on this, and I can't find any information on it.
Yeah,
I was wondering, do you guys know of any resources to look at this legislation or to find any info whatsoever on it?
yeah, unless, so we do follow all legislation every year related to recycling and solid waste, so we followed the bill. So really all that's out there right now is the bill.
Okay.
That's been signed, I believe it's been signed by now. But that's it, since they don't know, they can't really put out any information, they just don't have the information.
Right.
Yeah, any other, good, so these are some of our possible solutions. And that's it for me, so now Brian's gonna get to talk to you guys about some more nitty gritty stuff.
You can take a breath now.
I can't take a breath. I talked pretty quickly, I was trying to get through it all. I did well, it's 11:32, I had till 11:30. Now you're gonna have to talk quickly.
Yes. That's enough for me, because I can talk about trash all day.
Take your time.
So, full cost accounting. First of all, I've been in the industry for over about 25 years now. Started as a freshman in high school. One of the things that really made me addicted to this industry, not necessarily environmental, but that's kind of secondary, but the numbers, the data, and stuff like that. Many ways you can keep track of it. One of the real in-depth ways is full cost accounting, which really digs into the numbers, can help towns educate the residents, make data-driven decisions and program changes, which I used a lot when I was in Littleton. And used for financial planning, fees, rates, stuff like that. A good example is I just did a full cost accounting analysis for Littleton as part of a grant, and they're a pay-as-you-throw town, so they have the town bags. For last year, the town bags were still paying for the whole MSW program. But that will change this year, so now next year, they'll make that hard decision on if they want it to cover the whole cost and up the price of the town bag, or if they just want to continue for a couple of years and keep track of it some. Some of the things it really looks at for full cost accounting, not only your typical budget, your expenses, your revenues, it really digs down. So like in Littleton's case, you know, we had different paths. So we looked at the MSW, C&D, recycling, and then we combined their brush and their compost. Because they chip their brush, it kind of goes into that same category. As I said before, you know, after you figure it all out, you dig down the numbers, you take the wages, you take the tipping, the transportation, general expenses, could be utilities, maintenance, stuff like that. It also can figure in, your depreciation of your equipment, which one thing I have found is a lot of towns don't have accurate information, especially on all of the older stuff. of how much it was, how much they paid for it, and how long they're expecting it to last. And then it also takes a portion of the shared services, and by what I mean by shared services, as a town, you know, you work at a transfer station, but part of the town office, part of the finance department, part of the town manager's budget, or whatever, really belong as part, you know, under the transfer station, because they help you guys out. So it really digs down, you can do a percentage of that. In Littleton's case, as I said, they were making a little bit of money on their MSW. C&D, it was costing them about $170 a ton, even after their fees. They don't have a truck scale, they just do it by the cubic yard, eyeball it. Their recycling last year was an absolute horrible year for recycling. They get a lot of recycling. So that really hurt. That was about $180 a ton it cost the town. And then same thing with their brush and their compost. So, I'm expecting, I'm gonna do it again next year, just to do 2024's numbers, but I'm expecting the recycling cost per ton to be really down compared to what it was last year. Any other questions about full cost accounting before I kind of go? And these are all kind of integrated into full cost accounting. So C&D and bulky waste densification. We all know, you know, especially if you just have an open top, you know, there's a lot of airspace in open tops, especially if you just throw stuff in. We have a lot of towns in New Hampshire that don't just toss it in and call it good. They're only getting 2 to 3 tons in an open top container. And that's costing them a lot of money for transportation. You know, other towns have a backhoe, either at the facility, they rent one out every once in a while, or the highway department will come down, crush an open top, really get that weight in the can. It varies, depending on if you're doing it from ground level, from up on a dock, stuff like that. In Lancaster, I was getting between 5 and 6 tons per open top, so you're gaining a couple tons just by using a backhoe. Or pre-crushing it with a loader, something like that, especially if it's a bureau or something like that. An auger, there's not many augers left in the state, there may not even be any. Most of them were all up in the North Country. So, Avard, which is the Androscoggin Valley Regional Refuge District, had one. I'm lucky I said that correctly. Lancaster had one. They got rid of theirs because it was in really rough shape. Littleton had one, same thing, they got rid of it. Both Lancaster and Littleton went to a pre-crusher, which is, any of you have ever seen, is absolutely amazing in my opinion. It's pretty much like an MSW compactor, but it has this huge steel guillotine, this thick, and it drops down, and the ram just pushes right up against it, whatever's in its way, the couch, you know, bureaus. There's businesses that do a 55-gallon drum and it crushes it like that thick. Just absolutely amazing. The wear and tear is a lot less than an auger, so it should last longer, comparable in price range. With a pre-crusher, Littleton, which they use the pre-crusher mostly for their bulky waste, not necessarily a lot of C&D, but they're getting about 8 to 10 tons per container. So they're getting real good weight, a little bit more labor, tossing it in or whatever. But it's, you can get them different sizes. I really recommend everybody at least seeing one in person. it is pretty impressive.
Excuse me,
Yes,
when you do a cost benefit analysis
Yeah.
on these issues. And let's assume 1 second, you start looking at numbers based on what is presented. Hey, you guys, this town could do A, B, and C. Does someone from NRA ever come in and do presentations to residents and to educate them? In other words, one of the biggest issues we see down at the recycle plant is that there's an attitude of, you have so many people come down who take it serious, and others obviously, and screw it, we're not gonna bother with it. You start doing the cost, but you do cost benefit analysis, and if people can see there's a potential payback, and they can see a number drives people more. Well, it's difficult to educate them on me or anybody else presenting to them, but someone like yourself, and then supported by the town. I mean, we pay X amount of dollars a ton for trash now, somebody, okay? So obviously, we do things like, we take away the issue with certain things that not going in the trash. But to me, when you look at this thing, it's gotta be a full-blown effort. You're never gonna get 100%. I'm an idealist. I like to think that's the case. That's never gonna be the case. But you like to get somewhere in the 80s or 90s and not 20%. But how do you, it's back to education again. So how do you educate them in with NRRA to be out of that educational process if the town was to take a more proactive approach?
so there's a couple different things. First, if we have time, it's definitely something where member services, we've had in the past, we'll go to at least now with everything being virtual, we'll go to a select board meeting and talk to at least the higher ups per se. As far as that recycling education presentation, we do have a longer version, and I can kind of have you pop up on it if you want.
Yeah, I mean, we've done sort of recycling 101 presentations. I've talked to recycling committees. I think if a town reached out and asked us to help with that, we would be more than happy to do our best. There are only 10 of us. So we are limited and only 1, 2, 3, 4 of us really do that kind of outreach. But yeah, I mean, if a town wanted help putting together some presentation and having us help present it, that's definitely something that.
So you need some serious converts in the town who keep carrying on your presentation.
Exactly.
In a very positive manner.
Yeah, but we could at least, help get that ball rolling. Another thing that like Brian has done is if he's done like a site visit, or has done full cost accounting for a town, we do issue reports both to the transfer station and to the select board or whoever,
Good.
which can help.
Thank you.
It's up to them.
Thank you.
And once again, I was always big into numbers, and that was my strong point. And the nice thing about knowing the numbers, and keeping track of the numbers, is, for running a transfer station total between the two towns, for about 8 years. When I had a warrant article to ask for equipment, I never had under a 75% approval rate for the town. Most of the things were up in the 80 to 90%. Because I was able to, once I had the numbers, I was really able to say, this is how much it's gonna save us in the long run. That's how I got the pre-crusher, getting a larger baler at Littleton, for an example, getting a faster horizontal baler. We had so much material coming in, and that old baler just couldn't keep up, so we'd be sitting there with a skid steer waiting for the conveyor to get caught up. So it's like, well, we get a quicker baler, it'll save us time, and they're continuing that. So now the manager, they just got a new Bobcat skid steer this year. They made the decision to keep their used ones, so now they have 2. So now they don't have to wait for the skid steer to be free to move something.
Well, the beauty about having crunching numbers and understanding the numbers is it's easy to demonstrate what the payback will be on your investment. Someone can say the payback will be X, but no, if you can demonstrate that by the numbers, the number crunching, us, do that with capital equipment. Hey, if my payback's gonna be in 18 months or a year, I can get a payback in a year, a piece of capital equipment, I'll tell you what, raise a flag, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay,
The pre-crusher in Lancaster, when I got it, payback was between 4 and 5 years for that. When I left, they actually started putting more in the pre-crusher, not as much in an open top. So that has actually quickened it up a little bit more for the payback, so it's probably gonna be between 3 and 4 years.
2 and 3 years is still excellent.
Exactly, for a $50,000 piece of equipment, it is. And I mean, same thing with a truck scale, I mean, Guilford is here. You know, they paid that truck scale off real quick, how much money they saved. So,
Speaking of skills.
yeah, there we go.
I mean, it's just right.
I just have another question. What does Marlboro have? Don't they have like a grapple that they crush there? Is
Yeah, yeah,
that what they're doing? Just like, right?
I'm not sure about what they have, but you know, both the facilities I ran, I had a grapple on the skid steer. I always wanted to get one for the loader. I never, before
I'm just wondering what kind of investment that is
Yeah.
compared to the pre-crusher, you know? what I mean?
yeah, definitely pros and cons to it, you know? I know like with the forks for the skid steer, after I kind of got used to it, yeah. A bureau was, of course, easy, you just crush it up and it falls apart.
Mhm.
But something like, it got to the point after a little bit where I could take a sleeper sofa and actually, you know, break it apart enough where I could get the metal right out of it, so I could recycle the metal and then, you know, crush the rest of it up and then take care of it that way. So it's a great tool. The skid steer one, was at that time was about $3,000. Payback, I never figured that out just because we use it for so many different things, even like moving refrigerators after they get drained. Just going in with the grapple bucket where you just pick it up and bring it right to the metal area and stuff like that, saving wear and tear on yourself. That was a big thing right there, you know, so I mean, to me, it saved, you know, a lot of money in possible workman's comp, you know, stuff like that, so.
Roughly, how much does a pre-crusher cost?
So the one in Littleton, which was 2018, cost about 55,000. The one in Lancaster, which would have been 2021, I believe, that was roughly the same. With that one, it was actually a refurbished one. Because at that time, steel prices were like way, way high. So it was gonna cost quite a bit more if I bought a new one. So we actually went through Recycle Mechanical, who was located right in New Hampshire. And they had a big company in Florida upgrade all of their MSW compactors, and what it was a big box store, so they weren't used rough, like what a transfer station would use it for, and they just converted it into a pre-crusher. And it actually saved quite a bit of money, it probably saved $20,000 by doing it that way, just because they had, at that time, they had a surcharge on any steel at that time, so I didn't have to buy it through that surcharge.
And how was it paid for? Was it paid for with some grant money, or was it paid for just with town budget, or how?
So in both cases, I had some funds in a revolving fund.
Yep.
So it was partially paid for by that, and the remainder was through the town. So usually like a 3-year loan type thing is what they usually did for that price range. But luckily, like in Littleton, all the revenue I got made from recycling went into an enterprise fund. So I was able to use that just for transfer station improvements. So I did a lot from there. In Lancaster, we didn't necessarily have that, but we had other funds available through the transfer station, including, in Lancaster, we had the, a tire program where it was a motor vehicle waste fund. I don't know if any of you heard that before. It's actually an RSA. We loved it. So what would happen is when someone would register their vehicle, it's, I think like a $2 or $3 fee. The town clerk keeps 50 cents of that. The rest of it goes into a fund to use for tire disposal, any motor vehicle waste. So like, used oil, used antifreeze, you take from that money. The only downfall is that you cannot charge your residents for a tire that was registered in town. In Lancaster, we always made a profit every year. So in Lancaster, which is a population of about 3,300 people, we made about $9,600 a year in that fund. And it didn't cost us $9,600 a year to dispose of the tires. So we were able to build up that fund. So scales. Of course, there's 2 different types of scales. The 4 scale, which most transfer stations have. If you use it to weigh stuff and charge the residents, you do need to have it registered through the state and tested every year. When I was in Littleton, we had that because we would charge by the pound for electronics. So the electronics program just paid for itself. At that time, we charged between 20 and 25 cents a pound for electronics. We also did shredding in Littleton, so we charged by the pound for shredding, and they paid the shredding that came in. Lancaster, we just used it to weigh up our own bales. So we didn't need to have that extra expense. We still had it tested every couple of years just to make sure it was at least accurate. But yeah, they're pretty cheap. You should be able to find them for well under $2,000. New Hampshire the Beautiful, because it's used for recycling, you can get a grant to help cover some of the costs for that. Like I said, they have a lot of uses. As for a truck scale, you know, most places that have a truck scale, it's in Guilford, Ashland, Franklin, Charlestown, you know, there's quite a few of them that have them. Use them for various reasons. A lot of the cases is for C&D. Which again, a lot of towns just eyeball it, a load when it comes in, they don't know. Sometimes they lose, sometimes they gain money, you just really don't know. It can also create upset customers because it's just a guess. You know, at least with a truck scale, you know the exact way, you know, especially if you do full cost accounting or whatever, or at least a smaller version of shipping plus transportation on your average can weight. you know what it's gonna cost to get rid of your C and D. So at least with a truck scale, you know the cost, you know how much to charge your customer. And it's the correct amount, so you're not losing money. Other towns use it as well for weighing some of their items. Charlestown goes over their scale when they bring their loose material to Keene to be recycled, just to compare it to what the Keene scale is, just so they know their records. Nice thing about that is even if it's like full straight load of cardboard, baled cardboard through us, if you have a truck scale, you can weigh it up. And if we get, you know, once it's processed, we get the weight slip from the company we send it to. And if there's ever a difference, it allows us to actually look at it, figure it out for you guys. You know, so you guys don't have to worry about it. And of course, they can be offered various reasons. They'll never be 100% the same, you know, just because of fuel usage and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, once again, the floor scale costs between $1,000 and $3,000. Depending if it's outside, if it's inside, stuff like that. Testing, calibrating every year can be pretty expensive depending on who you go through. So that's just one of those things, but once again, especially if you charge your residents, you can kind of add that into the price. They can usually last about 20 years. If anything now, the electronics go bad in them. And that will go bad a lot quicker than the scale itself, and you just have to replace that electronic. Same thing with a truck scale nowadays. Anything else on scales? I mean, we have one of the experts right here, so.
How good is your scale done?
Great. I mean, we lost, gosh, what was it? I'm trying to remember, 30,000 the first year. It was something crazy. I think it was like how much money we lost not having it. So we started with just tracking our C and D and quickly realized, you know, that we needed the scale and we were able to keep it very fast, and then we budgeted the next year. And that next year, I probably lost 30,000. And then in the third year, it cost me like 85 to put it in. So I literally had it paid off probably the same year. You know what I mean? What do you think of how much money I lost just before I had it in?
Right.
And they talked about doing it, but they were pinching pennies and they didn't want to spend the money to put it in. So when the new facility was built, they built it with no scale. And as soon as I got there and started tracking the data, I'm like, this is really bad. You need a scale. And so then they did it. So, you know, they thought about doing it, but maybe they weren't tracking the numbers to prove it. No one was doing that. So I started tracking everything as soon as I got there, and it was easy to prove fast that we needed it. So it was a little awkward to put in because we didn't have a great setup for it.
Right.
But we made it work, you know? So yeah, no, it's been great. And people don't complain. I mean, you know, we were so underestimating the loads. And it was very eye-opening. We went down to Alton. I think who also has a scale. And we went to see theirs. And they said to my guys, you know, estimate what you think this load costs, right? You know, whatever they estimated, it was half of what it really was. So it just it was a quick, like, eye-opening, like they said, oh yeah, that'd probably be, you know, whatever, it was $40. And it was like, I don't know, you know, 100. And they were like, oh shit, you know, so. So it just, you know what I mean? It like, and so we check it every year and we like tweak our cost per pound. So I think I was at 9 cents a pound, now I'm at 10. I always, you know, even out and then go like a penny higher. So like, you know, a plan for some of the cost of the staffing and stuff like that. So trying to update my fees, if not annually, every other year.
Right.
But I really look at them every year and I pick which ones. If there's some that are falling way behind, I update them because you don't wanna go too long because then you have a big hike and then people get pissed. You know, so you really should try and look at them every year, you know, but no, it's been great having that scale. I mean, it was, you know, it was a big process to get it, but It was shocking to start seeing how much we were losing. And honestly, the big thing that helped us figure that out was, like, we used to be like paper tickets, paper tickets for everything. So I just was like, start writing C and D on each paper ticket, and I saved those, big Excel spreadsheet. The thing that saved the day after we already proved it was a register, literally a register, and you can like mark everything, but now that is so easy, we print out one little slip each day that says how much C and D, how much this, how much that, and I've made the spreadsheet so easy for, my admin, she just puts in the five, whatever, the 8 numbers each day. Used to have to put every single ticket in, so, a register is a great way to start doing this stuff, to check your items. If you think you're losing money on something.
There was, so, two quick things, so as far as the register goes, first time I thought about a register for a transfer station was actually at an NRA conference back 17 years ago. And like, I was in the same, presentation as my boss, Tony Alacqua, and we both kind of afterwards, like, why didn't we think of this before? Because everything was handwritten.
Yeah.
It was taking him hours every week to figure out the money and stuff like that. And I think within a week, we ended up buying one.
You get comfortable doing things the way you're doing it, like, this is how we've done it, it's easy, we know this way, right? We gotta register, yeah, like, my guys were like, oh, register, Jesus, you know what I mean, it was kind of a pain to learn it, but like, they learned it, and now it's like, they're like, okay, yeah, it's a lot easier. So it's like, yes, there's a little learning curve that's like a pain, you know what I mean, but like, it's made everyone's lives easier. Way less, like, at the end of the day, closing out the cash and all that, like, it's just.
Even for old guys.
Yeah, even for like, staff, I'm still over there, yeah.
Old guy doesn't mean you break
Yeah.
your back, that can happen to young people.
No, it had a little learning curve, but what we did is we started the register, you pick a few items to start, and then we added more. You know what I mean? Once they got the hang of it, we had them do more. It's totally worth, like a register, if you don't have one, that's a great investment, it's like minimal money, and it will really help. You collect your data more simply and have a good log and, less chances of error on paper and stuff. It's totally worth it.
Then for truck scale, so one of the full cost accounting benefits for Littleton is now they have the numbers. For last year, it was $147 a ton it cost them to get rid of their C&D after what they charged you. So now they know they're not charging enough. And now you can kind of go and say, okay, is it worth getting that truck stable? And spending the money. And I think in Littleton's case, it could pay for itself in just a few years. They get more C&Ds than MSW. So that says something. So.
Maybe it says, well, I was gonna say, is it pay as you throw up there?
Yes, it is.
Is it cheaper to throw it out via C and D? They put it. Is it cost a resident less, which is why you're seeing more in there,
I think in their case, it's more or less, they have a landfill right next door.
Okay.
So it's just as easy for the MSW to hire somebody to take care of it.
Yeah.
When I was there, at least, we had a lot of people that would have a private company come pick up their trash every week, but they would still then bring the recycling. C&D is a little tougher for a contractor to get into the landfill. You need a CV, you need, most of the time they need, an asbestos inspection report, stuff like that, so it's easier just to get it to the transfer station and dump it. Pay as you throw, we only have a couple of towns here, everybody familiar with pay as you throw? Definitely a couple different ways. Once again, both Littleton and Lancaster have the bag program. Littleton, they started it in 1993, Lancaster in 1999. There's also punch card systems, sticker or tag system, weight-based system, if you have a scale or whatever. A cart, a can system, a lot of that is more curbside pickup. So there's definitely different types of it. It's one of those things where, all of a sudden it puts it all, I always like to give the example of, you have two people in your household that's generating one bag of trash, the pay-as-you-throw system, you're not paying for a family of 6 or 7, and they're 10 bags or 12 bags of trash a week. It puts it on the user. It is very difficult to get passed in most towns. Lancaster spent 18 months educating before it even went to vote. But it did pay off because they got the vote at, probably a 70 or 80% approval vote. And they even had people coming in later and saying, why didn't you do this before? It was just that popular. It's really tough. I've always said, you need your select board to be for it. Because if you try to get it passed and your select board is against it, odds are it'll never pass. It's, as I said, it's, most of it is, just, the bag system in New Hampshire. There are a few others, but less and less,
Does Barrington have it? Is it Barrington?
I think Barrington has it. Lebanon used to have a punch card system. They've actually gone to a bag system. It's just easier for them to do. Yeah, there's a lot of
I mean,
towns.
it's a great system, but it's super political to get approved.
It is.
Because people just see it as a trash tax,
Yes, exactly.
But it really does put the onus on the people who make no effort to recycle and the people who do recycle. You know what I mean? Because the more you take out of your trash, the less trash bags, the blue bags, you have to buy. So it is, like, the whole idea of it totally makes sense to those of us who get all that, you know what I mean? But like residents are just like, it's another way to tax me, or charge me another fee.
In Lancaster, that was actually my first year working at a transfer station. I worked the year before pay-as-you-throw started and then afterwards. So I got to experience both sides of that one transfer station. In Lancaster, they went from 1,500 tons a year of MSW. The next year it was only 500 tons. They dropped it that much. Their recycling doubled in tonnage. I think one of the things when you look at those numbers is the fact that you really have to dig down and realize for the MSW, it wasn't necessarily people recycling more, but that did happen. It was, they got the big businesses that were in town away from using the transfer station. Some people think of it as, well, they're paying taxes, they should be able to. It's one of those things that the McDonald's,
It's a business.
the library, not the library, the hospital. At that time, the hospital was, they had an incinerator. And with all the ash they were bringing to the transfer station and dumping it in the MSW. They're at least generating the revenue. And it's a business. And that, to me, at least, that wasn't as fair to the residents. So, but, still pretty much doubling the recycling is a huge part as well. And, good example, we had one resident, they usually did 4 bags a week. Within a couple months of the pay-as-you-throw starting, he'd done to 1 bag a week, and the remainder was just recycling. So that kind of shows you how much he wasn't recycling before. In Littleton, when I had to increase the price in 2018. I once again, way behind, look at increases, every few years. Littleton in that case, it was, I think, 15 years since a price increase of a town bag. So we were way behind. So it was a big jump, which there was a lot of backlash. But luckily they've gone 5 years. 6 years now, I guess, and probably next year they'll have to increase it again, but it'll just be a slight increase, but now it's caught up, now it's just gonna be every couple of years, probably a slight increase. Any questions about pay as you throw? Glass recycling. Glass is always an issue in New Hampshire and around the country. NRRA has 2 different programs. A clean glass program, which is just bottles and jars, no drinking glasses, no ceramics, no porcelain, no window glass.
Gatorade bottles, because those are glass apparently.
Yes. And a lot of other things people consider glass, yes, including propane tanks. You know, the clean glass program, we have a couple host sites in New Hampshire. If you can collect 30 tons on site and load it, you know, Guilford recently is doing that to get caught up in their glass pile. We can get it pretty cheap, at least, in my opinion. It's pretty much a 0% tipping fee, but you have to pay for the portion of the transportation. I don't know how much it covers. I mean, it's going all the way up to Canada, so 30 tons at, what is it, $25 a ton? It's not really.
Yeah.
It has to cost more. I think they're still losing some money. So it's not even covering all the transportation, but if you can get 30 tons, it's, to me, at $25 a ton, it's pretty cheap to recycle it. The PGA, which is the processed glass aggregate, which is porcelain mixed in and window glass and ceramics and all that type of stuff. A little tough to get rid of right now. We do have a few host sites. Closest to here is, we have one in New London and one actually at the Turnkey landfill in Rochester. A little bit more expensive, plus you have to truck it there, so that's always a tough thing. We're looking for more programs. We are in at least early beginning of looking at another clean glass site and a PGA site. Still really early. The PGA is actually, site is an actual company coming in New Hampshire. They haven't started yet. Almost sounds too good to be true. So once we vet it, once they're up and going, we'll see. He's talking every year, he can take as much glass as pretty much what New England generates. And that's crazy amount, and to me, that doesn't sound accurate. Laid by the machinery, it was, I think he said, an $8 million piece of equipment that came from overseas. He's installing it now. We're gonna see how it runs and stuff. Supposedly he's crushing it up real fine, and it's used in sandblasting.
Where's he located?
Or
going to be located?
It's gonna be Hooksett. Okay. Area. Once again, it's,
Remain skeptical.
yeah, exactly, without saying, you know, I tried getting pricing, he's very hesitant on even giving me price range. Is he talking $10 a ton cost, $50 a ton, or $100 a ton? You know, and see, he's gonna do the transportation, or is the town responsible? It's just, there's so many questions still. And it's one of those things where he has a partner that's not located nearby, so anytime you talk to him, you have to get his partner on the line, so we'll see. but definitely the clean glass, at least at the halfway decent market. It's a little tough, you almost need secondary sorting. That said, I know Guilford is starting to do that and seems to be going okay. As you notice, it's a little tough to deal with him direct.
Communication's not great. but-
Yes,
But no, I'm hoping to become a host site for the clean glass, that's my goal, is to get rid of the pile I have. And maybe get a grant, build a bunker, and then become a host site for towns to be able to drop at us, so that then 2MR can just pull from our site. So that you'd have less transportation costs, people could, I don't know what you guys do, but people could come to us and then it could be shipped out from there. So I don't know, that's what I'd like to do. What do you guys do with your glass?
Make it disappear.
a lot of towns do that.
Go for it, dumpster? Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we've been saving it for years and years and years and years, and we were trying to get Ivan Martin to come and crush it, this PGA. He's doing less and less and less work, and he's working out of like the New London, is it New London?
yeah,
He works over there, but like I could not get him to come to Guilford, and my pile was getting like absurdly large. So we finally,
he's tough to get a hold of.
yeah, so I met that 2MR company at the NRA conference and told them I've got a massive mountain of glass, and now we're starting to haul it out, so that's my new plan is to get it down to nothing and build like a bunker and then start hiding it in a more clean manner.
At least what I found, once again, it's hard to get straight information from 2MR. But he wants the glass. The issue has always become, he has very strict contamination. If it's over like a couple percent contamination, it's a huge fee. He seems to be at least loosening that up a little bit, which is a very good sign, because a lot of towns just cannot get that 1 or 2% contamination for glass. So if that happens, then that'll be a huge thing up there. So.
Yeah, and if we get to that point, we'll work on flyers that we can give to communities who wanna participate, like an educational flyer, like that's what I would do and say, if you're bringing your stuff to me, here's the flyer you can hand out to your community on what we will and won't take, just to kind of help, cause I know some communities just don't have the resources to kind of make those things and get that info out to the public, so that's the stuff I love doing, so like, I probably try to create some of that stuff to help anybody who wants to bring it to us.
Well, we just brush it for
That's a dish like it.
This is just, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
It was kind of Franklin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do
Your
it.
riverbed's so pretty.
Out of sight.
It's got such a spark. That's fun. Look for it.
And one of the last slides is just tools for the NRRA members. Once again, the recycling 101 presentation, it's designed, the full length one is designed for residents and decision makers. I don't know if you want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah, I just included this because you guys are all members, I believe, of NRRA, and a lot of people don't realize that we have a ton of resources. Pretty much if you need something made, I mean, to Megan's point, if you need like signs or flyers or anything like that, I'm happy to help as well, because, we know that a lot of towns just don't have that time to put stuff together. We've been creating a lot of scrap metal signs recently, because all sorts of weird stuff keeps appearing in scrap metal piles. So, yeah, and then we've got a whole bunch of grant information on our site. Ryan will go out and either come to you or talk to you on the phone or email you, whatever. Send a carrier pigeon if you have any questions about weird stuff that's shown up. And then we have two things you can sign up for. We have a bi-weekly newsletter that's just sort of designed for anyone. And then we have an exclusive listserv. It's just for our members. It's just for like operators, DPW, maybe town administrators. It's not for residents. And it's a great place where you can ask questions of other NRA member towns, anything from, do you have a policy on, I don't know, something related to the transfer station? Do you, any kind of questions that you have that you think would be helpful to ask other operators, you can send off one email and get a bunch of responses. So yeah, basically, like, if you need anything, just reach out to us. If we don't know the answer, we'll find the answer and then we'll tell you. And this is how you reach us.
We also have our brochure
Oh, yeah.
on the table and Andrea and myself, business cards right there. Please take one, get a hold of us if you have any questions. We're always willing to. I've been pushing, if you're not happy with the program you currently have, get a hold of us, let us go through it. See if we can help. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. We recently just had an amazing success story for Springfield, Vermont, where we looked at his scrap metal program. And by really digging down, changing how they actually work it, going from a bulk on the ground system to actually a containerized system. We were able to save them about $10,000 a year. So that's not typical, but it's a great success story about how we can just, if you voice your concerns to me, I can at least look into it and try to help you guys. That's one of the big reasons why I wanted to work for the NRA, is to help all of our members.
Oh, yes, we also have a grant that helped us create this. It was to the USDA. Thanks, USDA. Yeah, you said that.
Gotta love their money.
You can go back to our how to contact us.
Yes.
That's it from us.
Awesome. Thank you. Guess it's my turn then. Move right down, no, so fine. Yeah,
You don't save changes. You might have just closed both presentations now.
I don't work. No worries. Oh, that was even.
Maybe you did. Closed all PowerPoints. Brent's like, let me just screw this up while I walk away.
You know that noise he was making that, that was great to say, like, I'm seeing all the pop-ups right there. It's funny. Okay, I guess it's my turn now.
So this is, solid waste research that I conducted in 2024, so this year. I also work with a USDA grant, that's a technical assistance grant for solid waste operators. This presentation, I'm just gonna be honest with you, this was created for our commissioners in the springtime, because if you've ever worked with, town administrators or the select board, sometimes they don't have a real true perspective of what's going on at your transfer station. They're not dealing with residents every single day, they're not boots on the ground people, so the information that I have here is a little bit basic, some of it. And it's because it's to communicate with commissioners about, here's what's actually going on in the transfer station. On the other hand, though, this is the perspective I want you to have on this. I do a lot of transfer station site visits in the Lakes region. I hear residents asking questions a lot. I see operators answering questions. So maybe this could be a tool for you to answer questions about how things work. So that residents have a better understanding, because that's the communication part that we're talking about. When we're talking about improving our transfer stations, or why we're doing certain things, or where the material's going, or why do we have to sort this out? This is so you can have some answers and some ammunition for these questions. So the next slide I'm gonna put up, you're gonna say, ooh, what's that all about? Looks familiar, doesn't it? Oh, I put that in just for you guys, so you're, so we had a site visit, this, was it in the fall or the springtime? We had a site visit not too long ago. Springtime, so we can't, I heard fall, I heard spring, but we're in spring, I think. So, so, our funding source, this is what funds my position directly, is the USDA Solid Waste Technical Assistance Grant. It's a grant that we apply for every single year, so every single fall I apply for this grant. It provides us with the ability to provide technical assistance like this training, for instance. The reason why we host trainings, even though there's trainings through NRRA, there's trainings through New Hampshire DES and Concord. Some of our northern communities said, hey, it'd be nice if we had a little bit more local venues for us to get trainings, because we know that we take time out of your day to come do this. We know that towns, they only have so much money to pay for, employees, so we try to make it a little bit more local, more convenient. Research, so, our organizations in our state, they do a lot of, regional research for the entire state, but sometimes, how do you get that local knowledge? How do you find out what's actually happening in the Lakes region specifically? Because maybe the Lakes region is a little bit different than the Seacoast, or a little bit different than Vermont, or a little bit different than the northern communities. So this is to get a little bit of perspective on what's going on here. We have an annual HHW collection, so household hazardous waste is not the same as solid waste. This is the stuff that does not go to the transfer station. But our grant helps us pay for outreach, and we understand that HHW, household hazardous waste, and solid waste have a direct linkage, because these materials come to the transfer station. Residents are saying, hey, what do I do with this, this can of DDT that I just brought? What do I do with this today? And you're like, whoa, we don't take that here, we don't want no DDT, right? So this is what this collection is there for. And by the way, we had 5 cans of DDT come in this year at our collection so far, just so you know. So we have some interesting chemicals that residents have, but the outreach is there, the tools are there, we help our towns communicate that. I know that Northfield does not participate in our household hazardous waste collection. That's based on towns, wanting to be a part of that, but there's other resources too. I'm gonna give a plug to Wolfboro. There's a household hazardous lake product facility, so if a resident brings in anything suspicious and you're like, I don't know if we should take that because our ordinance doesn't allow us to do that. You can send them to that Lakes Region product facility to dispose of their stuff for a fee, but anybody in the state can go there. Community facility development and grant writing, so, I'm gonna talk about a grant, I'm gonna give a plug to the foam recycling program. And I'm gonna talk about how this grant allows me as a grant writer to technically support our communities, because not every community has a grant writer on staff, right? But we have projects we wanna fund, so this is something that we help with. And then public outreach and education. If you need to communicate with residents and we don't have the staff to handle that, or we don't have the outreach materials, Lakes Region Planning through this grant helps with outreach. We've helped with signage in the past. We've helped with outreach with our HHW collection. We've produced different pamphlets. I got a pamphlet right there on the table for food waste composting at home, to explain to residents how they can do that right at their own home. And we make these materials so that you don't have to explain these things, you can just give them a pamphlet and here you go, there's the information with that. So this is what we're doing with our grant, and these are the categories that we have. So examples of grant use, I've already kind of went over it, but, transfer station assessments, and I go and do site visits and I talk to you folks, so get your opinions on things. Equipment grant writing, HHW collection outreach, assessment of the waste stream, operator training, composting programs, and the list goes on. And I say it goes on because every single year when I do research or I talk to people, we found a whole new topic to go over, and then that's what's nice about the industry too, is it's interesting like that. Are any of these services something that your community might want? So I bring this up, not for you to give me an answer right now, but to think about it. Here's some of the services that we offer as Lakes Region Planning Commission for solid waste that you can take back to your community when you have something that comes up, and you can say, hey, maybe we can utilize this for our community. So why do you think, in your words, solid waste management is important? The picture is a hint. What do you think?
Just cleans the environment up.
Cleans the environment up. What else? What do you think? Different answer.
We're running out of space.
Running out of space. Okay. I give a little bit different of an answer, and the reason why is because I'm looking at it at the environmental standpoint, right? It's to protect our local drinking and surface waters. So the reason why we manage waste is so that we don't have glass on our beaches where our kids play. It's so that we don't have garbage floating around in Lake Winnipesaukee, well, there is, but so that we don't have as much of it floating around, right? So that we don't have styrofoam on the side of the bank all broken up, flying around in the wind. This is why we manage our waste, is to protect our drinking water. Because fresh water is running out in the world, and this is what we're doing to preserve it. So this is what I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna go over costs and revenue generation and transfer stations. All this information is focused on the Lakes region specifically. This is the research that I've done to talk with operators in the Lakes region. Solid waste systems review, this is gonna be a little bit more of the basic info, but it's good to understand if you don't have, you know, the other type of system. Why is that one in place and how does it operate? I'll talk about the research involved during 2023 for the foam recycling program. Megan is here today and she can talk to you a little bit about the program because she's the coordinator for it. But a research topic that we chose in 2023 was to find out garbage densities and dumpsters, how much cost savings might be involved with, you know, taking foam out of your dumpster. Do we even have foam coming into the transfer station? I've gotten that question quite a few times. I don't think we get any foam. This is the reason why we do some of this research, because I go on a site visit, I hear what people have to say, and I say, well, let's find out. And then purchasing scale and payback period, a very common question I get. And it'll be a little bit different than what Brian talked about. I'm gonna talk about the actual physical costs of what I found out. All right, so this is the research and why we did it. I just went over why, because I get these questions on site visits and my brain goes, I wonder why. I wonder what that's all about. So transfer station expenses. So what are they? They're expenses to maintain and run the transfer station. They come out of, many times often, they come out of your town budget. And you kind of have a limited control of rising costs, especially with private companies that are our waste haulers. They control that cost, so we have to think about ways to reduce it, to combat that. So these are the top costs that I found in the Lakes region when reviewing, and I'm sure it's very similar throughout the state. Would you agree with that statement? Very similar. So the top costs are construction and demolition, municipal solid waste, and employees. Those are the biggest three costs. And I will also highlight, and I'm sure you know this, in the Lakes region, we have a unique situation where our population quadruples during the summertime. So these costs truly matter. You get residents that, well, out-of-state residents that have no idea how your transfer station is run. They might have a different experience back home versus where they are now. We're gonna get different types of materials that come in versus winter versus the summertime. We might get really big bulky materials because, hey, we're going to our summer house today and we're getting rid of that couch and we're gonna get rid of it. We're gonna buy a brand new one because we're sick of it. Okay, these are the types of things that we'll see. And then employees. So every operation that's added to your transfer station requires more manpower, simply as that. So in order to incorporate a new operation that requires a whole nother person on staff, now we have to pay for a salary and we have to pay for benefits, which then again comes out of that transfer station cost. So these are our top costs that we're seeing. So I kind of gave my own definition of what I'm saying solid waste revenue is. Any operation at the transfer station that can generate revenue and help to manage annual budget costs for the solid waste function. And what I mean by revenue too is I'm not really seeing any facility that's like making money in the green, in the positive, that's like, yeah, we're making bank every single year. I'm not seeing that. This is literally to combat rising costs, to help with costs that have never been handled before in the past, because, you know, the market was different. You know, in 2016, we were making a lot of money on recyclables. Not so much now. So these are some of the changes that we're seeing. So let's talk about revenue generators. You've heard a lot of examples. Let's hear what you guys have to think. What do you think is a revenue generator at the transfer station?
Scale.
A scale, there you go. There's, you got that one right. Got the scale, okay. Any others? I think I got 8 or 10 examples on it. So,
Aluminum,
what's that?
aluminum,
Okay, and what is that operation for aluminum?
baling,
Baling, okay, baling and recycling, for sure. What else? You can get creative, anything.
OCC,
What's that?
cardboard.
Cardboard, yep. So we're talking about materials a lot, but let's talk about the functions. So we have the pay-as-you-throw program, right? We talked about that a little bit. The sticker system, some of our towns in the Lakes region have a sticker system. The town of Meredith has a sticker system where, it's a little bit unique where they cover, well, you can also go to our town beach as well by using this sticker, but it also has a cost associated with disposal of garbage too. So there's a sticker system that could be in place.
or fee schedule.
Fee schedule, yes. We talked about baling. Metal recycling is another one, right? So metal seems to always be able to be recycled. There's scrap yards that pay money for that, and it can always be reused. Has anybody ever heard of wire stripping before? Who does that? Does anybody do that at your transfer station?
We just bought a machine, but we haven't quite figured it out yet.
Okay,
No, we bought it, leave it alone.
okay. So, that's something I'll bring up. This is another one that has a pretty quick payback period from what I've seen is a wire stripping machine. The town of Meredith has that. I've seen,
What size machine does the town of Meredith have for wire stripping?
size wise, I mean, it's probably about this big.
They got, I think some online by a company that sells them, they go for somewhere between $1,600 to $2,200. And it does volume fast. Now, a piece of equipment that's gonna do, because you have insulation, the wire and everything else before you get to maybe the copper inside.
Mhm.
All right, that's your ultimate goal.
That is.
All right, so when I look at a piece of machine like that, and if you do a time study, we're talking about cost efficiency, and cost payback, if you do a time study in the size of a machine like that, your bang for the buck isn't gonna be there, okay?
Okay.
So you're almost better off, if your intake on the wire is great, you're almost better off making an investment on one of those industrial types of wire machines that may, it may go for $2,000, $2,500. And able to get there through quicker, get rid of the layers faster, and get the ultimate result is your piece of wire. And that to me would be almost a grant for a machine like that, not how you pay for it. It's an opportunity. Opportunity, we would demonstrate, we go to Guilford with our styrofoam. Yeah, okay, Guilford's got their machine over there, and we go there with and we generate lately, when we found out, my Gary behind it, Joe, well, he and I deliver the styrofoam sometimes, and we get a bunch of styrofoam. So the same could be attributed to the fact of the copper wire. Copper wire is an opportunity, but it's not an opportunity, it's costing you more money to generate that piece of copper because the amount of layers that are on their insulation wire for to get it. And to me, that's an opportunity, but an opportunity not with a small piece of equipment, something that's a little bit larger. It's more industrial type, not a homegrown type of piece.
So when I think about wire stripping, because, my summer job when I was 16 years old was at a transfer station. I used to do it with an X-Acto knife and I used to cut it by hand because they had nothing better for me to do, right? So,
So you're not going, Wayne.
so that's,
That piece of equipment, Mark.
No,
What?
exactly, no.
one of,
I guess we will, huh?
one of these wire strippers, from what I've researched, yeah, there is bigger industrial versions that are, like you just said, between $15 and $2,000 is what and I've seen, and those ones are really good, because it goes right through and it's done, and you got clean wire, and it goes right into a bin, and it's ready for bringing it to market. This is a job where I would say during the wintertime, when there's not a whole lot of chores going on and our population is overly increased and you're looking for some jobs to do, you can save that wire, stockpile it, and then send it through the wire stripper with just one guy, really, And you could probably strip all your wire that you collected through the year in a week. And you can bring it to market in a big bulk sale. And most of the people that I've talked to that have had wire stripper machines have said that it's paid for itself.
How much money do you think they get annually from copper wire?
I don't know that answer.
Yeah, I'm just
I didn't
curious how much
ask.
money there is in it, like,
Yeah,
I don't doubt it pays for itself, obviously, in time, but I was just curious, are you making $1,000 a year stripping wires, or like, we don't do that yet.
If it's good, clean copper, it can go anywhere from $3 to $4 a pound.
that's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not
We've
bad.
never separated out, so I don't know, I'm just curious the towns who do, like, what kind of revenue do they bring in from it?
Another research question.
Yeah.
I'll find out.
Another,
That'd be
revenue
interesting.
generator, like for us at least,
Yeah.
we make compost. So not just compost, but we make a loam with compost that we sell to landscapers.
Okay.
So we screen our, I call it culture pile, like we screen our culture pile. We also screen loam, we mix together and make a really nice quality loam. We sell that back out, and the money I make selling it is what paid to process it. So it just keeps our piles down. So it's usually a wash, like you process it and then you make enough money over the whole next year or two. And that kind of, it's like a, break even. But that's, I don't know, it's a way to manage your piles and also bring the money in to cover your costs.
Another thing I'll bring up too, Home Depot and Lowe's sell wire strippers. I found one that's a smaller unit for like $400. And I think if you were to, let's just say you didn't get a whole large quantity of wire all the time. And when I'm thinking of like copper wire, I'm thinking of like, you get an air conditioning unit and we're cutting the cord off. I'm thinking like you get a refrigerator or any white goods in general, and you're taking, the wires off of it and stuff like that. I've seen vast majority of transfer stations do a lot of white goods. So I mean, there should be the quantity to do it, but if you didn't get a whole lot of quantity, and you wanted a small investment, you could get a smaller unit that mounts right to the table and you can just do it as you get it. If that's something like that, and you put it as like an hour a week for labor. You can use that too, sure. I'm just saying, I went to the hospital because I cut my hand open for that. So price sheets we talked about, and oil collection and burning is another one too. Oil collection, I'll tell you this, I haven't gotten to the bottom of it all the way. Some people ask me, well, what's the environmental impact with burning oil? And I haven't gotten an answer quite yet on what the actual, like, what's the air quality contamination with it. But if you have a DPW garage, or if you have any kind of garage that you wanna heat during the winter time and your town doesn't wanna pay for fuel, there is a grant through New Hampshire DES where you can buy oil burning equipment and you can collect oil, do a pour off test, have it in a 55-gallon drum and use it for fuel. So that's another way you're not bringing in revenue, but you're eliminating costs, so.
Can I say a couple things about that?
Sure.
Sorry.
No, go right ahead, go right ahead.
You're my.
Yeah.
So both Lancaster had used oil furnaces. The majority of the years, we do not have to have any expenses to buy heating oil to heat the facility. In Littleton, we did, but in Littleton, we have 25-foot overhead doors. The second we open up that door, we lose all the heat.
stuff.
But it's definitely not only you're saving, the disposal cost of it, but we're saving thousands of dollars a year on heating it. So it's definitely worth it.
There you go.
As far as the wire stripping, now I made the town over the years probably $500,000 in non-ferrous metal sorting. I never found it beneficial to strip the wire. I found it, you just separate it into the 4 different categories. And then I would separate the electronics. Where then you could actually make some money on the electronics by separating the electronics instead of charging for it. So it's more beneficial, at least for me, to do that. And then I know every town is a little different. But it's definitely like, you know, we have one vendor that's paying like a half a cent a pound for printers, for an example, instead of you having to pay 14, 15 cents a pound. You know, and then like computers are 30, 40 cents a pound, laptops are like 70 cents a pound. You know, so the more you can kind of separate for your electronics, you can definitely make money on it.
Okay, that's good to know. So for, transfer station systems, so we got a couple different systems in the Lakes region. Now, one of them I didn't include in the slideshow, I called it a hybrid system, where we have kind of a mixed match of different arrangements where some operations are single stream. And then, you know, but some of them have a baler dedicated to cardboard, or some of them have a baler dedicated to aluminum or something like that. The reason why I don't like to advertise that one is because some of the vendors don't like that. They call that cherry picking and you're pulling materials out to do some baling. So I'm just gonna keep it in source separation and single stream recycling, is the terms I'm gonna go with. So source separation, who knows what that is? Everybody knows what source separation is? So basically, it's the resident separating out the respective materials, they go to a transfer station. The transfer station has, you know, here's where my cardboard bin is, here's where my plastics 1 through 7s go. Here's where my aluminum cans go, and they go into those bins so that it reduces the labor of sorting it out for the operator. The operator takes that material, it goes into a baler, they bale it, they have to store it, so storage is required for those bales, keep the quality of the stored bales together, and then they bring it to market. So that's what source separation is, and this is a picture of a building where it was strictly for storage for baled materials. And that's about, I mean, you're looking at probably about a third to a half of the year worth of collecting some baled goods. So what do the operators say about this? So I wanted to get some opinions about the people actually doing the job, right? So most of the transfers, actually, all the transfer stations that I've been to, there's a few of them that do pure source separation. All of them tell me that they make a lot of revenue off of baling their own materials. And it pays for a lot of operations and manpower. A lot of times I see that they're a little bit bigger of an operation. They have more staff on hand for doing that because they have a revenue source coming in. There is, you know, the labor costs associated with that too, and there's the labor of them having to actually do the baling and actually having to store it and work with recycling markets. NRA is a great resource for for figuring out the markets too. And then the part to this too is it's also a cleanlier material. You know, and there's no mixing of materials. One of the comments I got was, look at my cardboard, you can eat off of that cardboard. But try eating off the cardboard in the single stream recycling, you wouldn't want to. So this is some of the things that we're looking at too, so you get less rejected materials. A lot of times these are materials that will go into that stream. The cons to this is there's more manpower. And there's an upfront cost if you don't already have balers or the storage, so you might have to build a building, or you might have to even just have room for a building. Or you're gonna have to buy balers, because we don't have any balers at the moment, or we're gonna have to hire more people, so there's those costs, those upfront costs that are associated with it. But it's a long-term investment that seems to pan out quite often. I did hear some people say that it's smellier. In my opinion, I mean, my wife tells me I got a dump nose, but you know, in my opinion, when I go to the transfer station, I'm like, it's a dump, it's a transfer station, it's good. I don't really see where it's more smellier, but some people say that it is, because now you have even more recyclable materials that are on site. And then the other thing to this too is the glass. We talked about glass a little bit. When you bale your own materials, you're finding your own avenue of basically getting rid of the materials for your residents. So now you're in the position of having to find a resource to get rid of your glass, which is where NRRA stands. This is a lot of those people are part of that program because of that. They needed an actual avenue to bring that glass to. Some people have invested in their own glass crushers. One that I'll bring up is, Barnstead, Chichester, Epping, Pittsfield. They're a solid waste district and they have their own little custom machinery and they've got a guy that does the welding and does the metal work and he makes that machine run and it used to be a hammer mill for wood and a lumber yard and now it's a glass crusher. That's what they do with it. And some of the towns that are a part of that solid waste district will come and pick up that crushed glass aggregate. And they'll use it for, some of their own town municipal uses. Not any public roads that are like class 1 and 2, like highway stuff, but like, for instance, culvert repairs. And culverts are a huge deal in our area, a lot of them need repairs. So that's a type of material that you can use for fill instead of like purchasing pea stone or something along those lines. So single stream recycling, I mean, it's pretty obvious, everything goes in the one bin. It's convenient for the resident. The residents always like single stream for the most part because all they have to do is drive right up to the bin and my whole bin goes right into the dumpster and that's it, we're done. There's less manpower really associated with that. There's no baling operation, there's no movement of materials other than it goes into a bin and a waste hauler picks it up. But with that, I would also say that there is some cons to it. Yes, it's convenient, but there's a cost for your town. And costs are rising. And I talk with towns a lot about, well, here, oh, you just got a new contract for your waste hauler to take care of your single stream recycling. Did it go up or down? What do you think their answer is? Goes up. One of the questions I had every single transfer station visit I did this year was, in your opinion, do you think your costs have risen or lowered in the last 3 years? Every single person said they went up. So costs are going up. And it has to do with space, it has to do with labor, it has to do with markets, like we were talking about. So this is a cost. So long-term wise, source separation could be an avenue to reduce some of these costs and rising costs that are gonna continue to go up. But some of our communities that are smaller that have said, we need a better system, and they've tried to research how to eliminate some of their costs. They get locked into a contract for 3 to 5 years, and most of the time 3 years. And not only is there an increase in their last contract, but it also has an incremental 3 to 5% increase each year with that. So there's a lot of cost to that. But another benefit to this though is the glass. Single stream recycling allows for glass to go into the bin, so you don't have a giant glass pile. But weight is associated with that too, because there's a tipping and holding. So those are the cons to it. Annual budget, and vendor fees and contract blocks and the fact that costs are going up. So suggested tips for both systems, implement any kind of revenue generator that you think would work at your transfer station. And I say you think, because every transfer station in the Lakes region is completely different from the other one. Everybody has their own system in place. Some of them are a little bit mixed match, some of them are very traditional oriented, where we only do this type of a system and we're adding on to it as things go on. But think about where you could potentially generate some revenue at your transfer station to bring that back into your budget. We talked about numbers and being able to communicate with maybe town administrators and select board about like, this is the reason why we're putting in a warrant article to purchase something, right? Well, a method I came across with 2 transfer stations in the Lakes region was that they count the cars that come in. And they do this because in the Lakes region specifically, we get that quadruple effect during the summertime. And we have to make the argument of why we need to increase manpower, or why we need to increase recycling rates, or more bins, or whatever the cost needs to be. And why do we need that? Because look at our traffic flow, look how many people are coming into our transfer station. And then that brings me to my third point, which is, well, I actually didn't put it in there, but I was gonna say, it's the next slide. Traffic flow too will be determined on that, as well as how many people are coming in the transfer station. And then any way to reduce your waste is a good thing too, because that is going to reduce the weight in your MSW and your C&D bins, and it's going to reduce your hauling and tipping fees for the year. So traffic flow is another thing I look at all of our transfer stations, and I talk about safety a lot with our operators. So do you guys think you have a good traffic flow at your transfer station? So, it's okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Megan, why don't you tell us about your lane system that you have at your transfer station? You got multiple lanes.
Yeah,
Who did
so,
that?
the way we set ours up is everybody comes in and splits to either go to the right to do all their recycling or go straight to get on the scale. You can also bypass the scale and go straight to the backyard. If you go to the right, there's 3 full active lanes and really a bypass lane even beyond that for like staff. And it's kind of like live parking and it works good. I know when they first built the facility, they wanted pull-in parking and I was like, no way, because you know, then people are backing up and hitting each other and, it's worked great. Like, I mean, yeah, you can have 3 full lanes on the busy days on Saturday, but it keeps people moving and a little less talking because they're holding up the line, so,
Less
for-
talking, you said?
a little less, yeah. So the talking area is down at the swap shop.
Yeah.
That's it, I know. The swap shop is separate and to the side, like away from the 3 lanes, which is great, because then the people who wanna chat forever can go park over there and do that without impacting the flow of traffic, so.
So has anybody ever experienced somebody that's frustrated because, maybe an old lady's getting out, she's having a sweet time, putting stuff in the bin, and you got the guy that's the contractor, come on, I gotta go do something. So that's what's nice about improving traffic flow, is that maybe you might have less frustrated customers that come in because they can get in, they can get out, or somebody that's there to, socialize and chat, because everybody shows up at the dump. It improves the traffic flow. Another thing I like to bring up too is safety for the operators. I know you guys are all wearing green, must be for a reason. You don't wanna get hit by a car, maybe. Well, if you're constantly crossing back and forth through those lanes where people are driving in and, hey, it's only 10 miles an hour here, but you're driving 50 to pull up to the dumping site, These are some things that I like to bring up when I go to the transfer station, is your back turned to vehicles coming in all the time? Or can you keep your eye on the whole entire thing going on so you can see what people are dumping, you can help people direct them with traffic, there's a good traffic flow. So think about traffic improvements at your transfer station as well, and signage too, to help with that. So now we'll go into the foam disposal research. So this isn't strictly about the regional program and how it operates, but this is more about the research Lakes Region Planning did to kind of come up with a few little number statistics to talk to communities and residents about what kind of costs are we saving? What are we talking about there? How much foam are we actually kind of seeing coming into our transfer stations? Are we even getting any kind of foam? That kind of a thing. So let me ask you, do you think foam, and when I say foam, I mean polystyrene number 6, the styrofoam stuff, do you think we get a lot of that or a little bit of that? What's your opinion on it?
We get a good amount of it now.
You get a good amount of it now? Okay. Do you think it's because you have an outlet for recycling, or do you think it's
I'm
because?
pretty sure that's why, yeah, because we never used to really take it until they got their machines that they take it from us, and so now we do a lot more of it.
Okay. So the research we did, I had an intern in 2023, her name was Zoe, she was from Plymouth State University. We were trying to determine if A, residents were actually bringing foam into the transfer station, and B, roughly about how much. And C, what are the densities of everybody's MSW bin where the styrofoam is actually going into? So we can come up with an idea of how much room we're making if we take the foam out. And this was 6 weeks, and we went to 5 random Lakes Region transfer stations. We cold called people and asked, hey, would you let us do some research? And that's exactly what we did. And we did survey stuff, so part of that research was to get the quantity from people. We weren't like asking them to rip open your garbage bag so I could see what you brought in today. We weren't doing that. But we brought little surveys with them, and we just said, roughly in your garbage can, in your 33 gallon garbage can, how much foam do you think is in there? Is it a quarter of the can? Is it a half of the can? Because it takes up a lot of room. So how much room do you think it's taking? And that's where we got our quantity base.
So the average volume of foam per container in gallons was about 751 gallons per container of MSW, and that's a standard dump, a standard, bin, for MSW. And then the cubic yards of that was about 3.61 cubic yards per container of MSW. And I'll tell you, when we looked at people's MSW density based on their hauling weight and all that kind of stuff, boy, does that vary. I mean, everybody's got a different dumpster density, and some of them have different size dumpsters too, so that also changes the research on that. But for a 40 cubic yard dumpster, a 12-ton capacity dumpster, 4 to 10% of that dumpster is foam, is what we estimated out of that. So it's a little bit of it. And then what did residents say about this when we were doing our survey results? So, you know, we have a lot of foam, we store it in our garage, we don't know what to do with it. Some people are saying that they're taking the foam and they're breaking it in half and trying to put it into their garbage cans, and it's getting everywhere and it's just blowing off into the wind. Some people were saying, I would love to recycle. And most of the communities I'm seeing foam recycling is pretty positive outlook on it too. I think plastic is the one material that really upsets people when they find out that they can't recycle it. It's like, oh man, it's just gonna go into the landfill then. So now in 2024, we have a regional foam recycling program in the Lakes region with town of Guilford as our host site. Megan and I worked together on a grant application for Northern Borders Regional Commission, and we applied for what was it, $180,000 is the total project cost, and we applied for $50,000 to complete that. Guilford was able to purchase recycling equipment for foam recycling, and now we have a regional program where towns can divert waste and have a hauling cost reduction, because we're not bringing so many dumpster loads to the landfill every single year, because annually that reduction eliminates a few bins for them. So that's pretty much what I just said. We did the Northern Borders grant. This is what our costs were. It's a 50% match requirement. And, funds were purchased for the densification, unit and all the bins associated and the other recycling equipment for it. And the install and transport of it. So this year was the official start of the regional program for towns to be included with it. I got that video from our tour, so here's the video. It's not working.
Sometimes you have to click on just the picture instead of the play.
So,
Yesterday we did, we had some volunteers come from the robotics team and they processed 51 giant bags in about 4 hours.
wow,
And that densified down to 15 ingots. So 51
Yeah, it is
You know,
pretty neat.
Gaylord sized bags down to 15 45-pound ingots.
that's pretty crazy how much room that takes up and then.
That's just
bring it
one
down
week.
to, and
Like, that's what we do every week, so.
wow, 54 bags. So what are the benefits for communities involved with this particular program? They're able to recycle their styrofoam and not pollute the environment is one. They are diverting waste from New Hampshire's waste stream, which is our state's goal. They're reducing their annual MSW costs by reducing hauling, for the year. And revenue goes right back into the recycling system again to keep the machine running and keep the program going. So it's self-sustaining. These are based on our conversation in the springtime. This is what the current, program is.
Yeah, we have over a dozen now.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, currently interesting and other ones, yeah, in collections. I created a map online too, a Google map, I gotta link it. but that at least shows people where it's being collected at a transfer station versus where it's being collected at a community event. So that's on a map now. Like I said, I gotta update my recycle right webpage with it, but
Yeah, I see our town.
I know they're not on there.
We're on
Why
it.
is he even talking?
Jeez.
Well, let's get off that one.
Gotta add that.
So the last part to this is let's talk about scale implementation. So, scales are a common topic that I come across. I get quite a few towns asking me, well, what does it take to put in a scale? How much does it cost? How much room do we need? What are the requirements for it? So one of our towns, the town of Tamworth was, there you go. The town of Tamworth was improving their transfer station and they're in the process of potentially purchasing a scale through a USDA grant that they were awarded. So we had to do some research on how much it costs and what it would take to put it in so that we could put in a budget line item for the grant use. So these are standard sizes that I got from a company called Advanced Scale in Manchester. I did call more than one company, but I'm gonna use them as the example because they were a one-stop shop. There is more than one company out there that can do this. There was another company that was right on the other side of the border in Maine that also was a one-stop shop that the town of Tamworth found. But these are the most accurate numbers that I had, so that's why I wanted to tell you where I got it and what it was. So each transfer station has a different layout, has different space available for a scale, different traffic flow, different types of vehicles that you might be wearing. So this must be considered when you're purchasing a scale. What are your needs? So there's different sizes of scales. There's a 10x40 scale, which is what we basically determined to be the minimal size for a transfer station. And that would handle any kind of car or a pickup truck. Maybe a pickup truck with like a trailer, but it's not like dump truck size. And then a 10x70 scale was like a larger truck size. And then what does it involve? I mean, New Hampshire Weights and Measures Bureau has a certified, they come in and they certify the scale for you to make sure it's calibrated correctly. The person that operates the scale in the scale house has to have a certification as a weighmaster's license. So you can't just stick somebody in the scale house to operate the scale. And there also needs to be 10-foot approaches of concrete on both sides for getting up and down the scale as well. So those are a few requirements and some minimal sizes for this. So here's the price breakdown of what I found a scale to cost in 2024, so current prices. So at a one-stop shop, the pillars, the platform, the scale is gonna cost $45,000. Installation is $5,000. Delivery is another $5,000. The concrete price, it's really tough to get a concrete price right now because you have to call a general contractor to find this out. Some of them have no idea what you're talking about because they only deal with like house foundations or something along those lines. When I say one-stop shop, the reason why I bring that up is, and that's probably your easier avenue, is because they have companies, contractors that they already work with that know how to put these scales in. And they can basically give you a whole price of this is from the beginning to the end of putting a scale in, and we'll take care of all the logistics for it. So if I were to recommend purchasing a scale, I would say try to find a one-stop shop in this current economy, because finding a contractor to do the site work to put in a scale is kind of hard right now. And then there's the scale software. So this is the part that's not included with the person selling you the scale. This is a whole nother separate company. I found a company out of the town, out of the city of Manchester that does this. And basically this is what their cost was. It was $200 a month. And it came out to about $2,400 a year, but they also have, if you get into a contract for 3 years, they reduce your cost by 10%. So there are some cost cutting measures with that. And what I mean by software is I don't mean electrical equipment that comes in. You don't get the monitor and the printer and all those kinds of things. They give you the legitimate software to use that. But you do need to have that equipment, the monitor, the printer, things like that, and it's very simple. You can get a Dell monitor, a really cheap Dell monitor, and a nice printer, and you can print off receipts and use the software. So the total cost that I came up with was right around $77,000, which wasn't as expensive as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was gonna be more like $200,000 or something crazy. But this is the cost that I came up with doing a lot of price checking and talking with people that sell scales, put them in, and have used them. So now we were also talking about payback period. You know, we're talking about how do you communicate this to your residents, that this is gonna be a good purchase? We talked about how are we gonna talk to our select board and convince them that this is something we should implement at our transfer station, right? So here's what the payback period looks like for scale. So what I did is I took that cost, I rounded it up to 78,000 for easy math. I said, what's a random Lakes Region town had for annual tonnage? So I picked a town that had a population of about 3,500 people, which I think is kind of in the middle. To give you perspective, Guilford has about 7,200 people. And our smallest Lakes Region community has about 1,300. So 3,500 is kind of in the middle a little bit. And their average tonnage based on one stop was 350 tons a year is what they had in their last year. So out of 350 tons, I said, what would that cost for disposal and when would we pay off our scale? The price that I got on C&D tonnage for a tipping fee, I called Casella and I called Waste Management and I asked them if I was a brand new town and I was trying to, contract with you and you're gonna charge me for C&D disposal, what's your tipping cost right now? So this was the average between the two, $220, and I like to round them so that they're nice numbers. So $220 a ton in 2024 is how much it costs for you to dispose of C&D. So if you had 350 tons for the year, and you had this cost, and this is how much your implementation of a scale was, 77,000. We said that in 1 year, you're going to be able to pay for $77,000 worth of disposal costs. So in 1 year, you pay off that scale. How's that for a payback period? Right, and so these are the things that we calculate and help with, so that we can communicate that to our residents and select board, so that you can actually see the numbers.
So you're doing the total tonnage taken in, so like what I did was the tonnage lost.
Okay.
Like, so like, let's say 350 tons a year, you were saying 220. And what I did was I said, okay, it cost me 77 in this example to dispose of trash. Or to dispose of C&D. I only brought in 43. So I took the difference of that and said, that was my loss. I lost that much money. And so, cause I'm not like, so that's what I did. That's how I explained it to my board. In this example, yeah, you paid in a year, but like, I didn't know if you do it, like, I was saying the money I lost was the payback period, so it took 2 years of loss to almost pay it. Is this more than normal? Like, that's how I explained it, but I'm just curious, is
What
that
do you
more
mean
considered?
by loss though?
So like, in this example, you brought in 350 tons of C&D.
Yep.
And it cost the town $77,000 to process that C&D. But with your fee schedule and the estimates, the estimated weights that people did at the scale house, the tickets for the whole year say we only brought in $43,000. So, you know what I mean? So $34,000 was lost that year. I'm just looking at how you did it and like, you know what I mean? That's how I explained it, like that it took a little over 2+ years to pay it back.
Yeah.
But is this like, I'm curious, NRA, like, do you do it in just one, do you say like you sell it this way, that they do it in 1 year? I'm just wondering if I explained it,
I kind of agree with you, how,
the loss
as
versus
a
the
former manager, if I presented it to the board, I would go explaining the loss.
loss, is your
Yes.
payback here.
Right.
Okay,
So like in Littleton's example, you know, they lost $145 a ton last year
Okay,
for C and D, so that's what they would, you
Okay.
know. Yeah, if it wasn't for that, because they still charge fees.
Yeah.
So you can't really count that, you know, so yeah, the loss, exactly what you're saying.
I'm just asking that because like, you know what I mean, like that's different than how I sold it, so I'm just wondering if that's a better way to sell it, but I sold it as the loss was the. Do you see what I'm saying? You know what I
I see
mean?
what you're saying. I would say also too that some towns don't have a fee schedule either.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering like, what if they're just paying for the straight disposal costs of it?
And they don't charge their residents,
Right.
yes, then absolutely,
I guess that's the way I was
Yeah,
thinking about it, but I didn't think about factoring in the fee schedule too.
yeah, no, and that makes sense, like you said, you know what I mean, and towns aren't. If they're not charging, then yeah. Then-
You don't know
Payback's
labor cost, there's no labor
instantaneous.
cost in this, is there a labor cost in this at all? That's self-running machine. I mean, there's no labor built in for you doing an ROI, but there's no labor built in, so how can you have a 1 year payback, when there's no labor associated and show an ROI in 1 year?
You said you did this job out of the goodness of your heart.
I didn't hire any new people to have scale, it was the same guys, they're either estimating the weight that goes by you in the,
Yeah,
that's
that's
how
how I figured.
or they're weighing it with a ticket. So there was no new labor related to this. The new cost related to this is annual, what do you call it, like the software and the inspection and calibration each year. You know, that's an added cost
Yes,
that you didn't have previously. But I didn't hire any new staffing to have a scale. We just went from literally a paper ticket, we think you have this much, to get on the scale.
How many do you have at the transfer station?
How many people?
Yeah.
4 full-timers, 1 seasonal.
and you're a lot bigger than ours.
Yeah. We got two.
Oh, yeah, well, they got a $30 million building over there too.
Yeah, yeah.
have
We
30
started
yeah,
with,
30.
we started with 2 people.
Yeah.
And what I did was I had to, I can't remember how it worked, I think it was like 2 people and a seasonal, I don't know what they gave me. And I had to supplement with highway staff to just keep the facility open and running and bailing. And so that's the info I used, I'm pulling people off highway to staff this place.
Right.
And that was my explanation to get the staffing I needed.
Right.
So until I stopped supplementing with highway staff, I really had enough people. And really, right out in the beginning, I'm like, you're gonna need full-time people to run this, you know what I mean? But we just did, it took 1.5 years to kind of prove that, which is fine, you know, and then we got the right staffing. So, yeah, you know, sometimes it's interesting, like the foam cycling, people ask me like, well, how much does that cost me? So it's like you move your staff from doing this to doing that. So instead of shipping out more hauls of MSW and moving it and paying the costs, and my guys are compacting, unloading, you know what I mean? Wrap it all up, right, send it out. Instead of doing that more, they're spending 4 hours a week processing foam. You know what I mean? So like, I didn't hire new people to do the foam, we just shifted what we're doing. So, you know, to me, if it got to a point, if that foam program gets to a point that it's, I can't keep up with it, then that's where I need to relook at things. Right now, we're keeping up with it, with the staff we have and the size of the program is, but that's why we don't take like commercial foam. I could never keep up with that, with the staff I have. And then it would, you know, it'd be too much of a burden. And I would need more staff, and then I'd need to charge people to bring me their foam, so I could pay for that staffing. So it's, you know, trying to, you know, some people get concerned about making changes sometimes because they're like, oh, I need more staff. Well, sometimes it's just you're allocating your staff in a different manner now, you know, instead of doing X, you're doing, you know. So.
Sense. That's it, that's what I have. So at this point, I mean, if you guys wanna break off a little bit into a roundtable with some questions, we can. So we'll just go off of that. Does anybody have any questions based on what we went over? Any other remaining comments or thoughts about your transfer station or anything like that?
I think you do it, doing, cost benefit analysis. I call it payback, return on investment, whatever terminology you should use. I think when you do these classes in the future, and one of the things you're trying to educate people, I think a lot of people don't understand the return on investment. don't understand what it takes, don't calculate labor, they don't calculate cost of the materials, like what we're doing, baling wire, your cardboard, the labor, the time. There's a lot there that's not looked at, so when you do your return on your investment, it can be inflated. If it's inflated because you don't do all your numbers correctly, and you go to try to sell it to your board or your town manager, someone's gonna kick it right back in your face, who understands numbers is gonna question you. If you don't get your homework done, you're gonna look like the horse's ass. And then what happens to the program? The program then maybe disintegrate or don't get a food. So return on, you talk about, I think this issue with the styrofoam, I mean, is great. I mean, we, as was alluded to, we send down about every other week, we'll send down 4 big, what's the volume, Gary knows better than I could.
Besides the big deal.
Because I was a gay one. So, I mean, there's benefits there, obviously. But the thing it is, when you do investments in the future, if you're gonna sell somebody, you gotta really have your homework together, because you gotta, every time you go in front of people, they get this, if they haven't got it, someone in the audience does, they're gonna tear you apart. So return on investment, how you calculate it, how it's done, you really do, you gotta really do your homework, because you wanna be the answer man or answer person to be able to say, yeah, I got that coming, that coming, that coming.
What'll be interesting is, so you're participating in the phone program, if you guys are weighing your, MSW loads that go out, you know? If,
We have consultant themselves. Yeah, we have.
so if you have that data somewhere where you know, like, every load that went out is this, make a mark where you started bringing phone. And look at what your loads are now, and see if you have increased, because you should see an increase in your haul weight. Because now that the foam is out, more MSW can go in.
Yeah.
Which means you should have less hauls a year. So we're saving about $5,000 a year and less hauling now.
What's interesting is the fact, I think the reason why people started throwing pretty styrofoam down was the fact that we switched over to do one size container to a household for trash. So you had either a 96, a 66, or a 33. And people said, oh my God, I can't throw this away. All of a sudden, bang, we're working on, you guys taking styrofoam. Oh, yeah, and all of a sudden that's flowing.
Basements.
You know, 'cause people now, they have their room in their regular trash, and they can throw away things that
Yeah.
obviously weren't recyclable. All were recyclable, is that deep 6 styrofoam, station one.
I'd be interested in that data from the towns who are participating, like, I'm trying to track our own stuff, but like, are those towns participating with us tracking, are they seeing the savings in the hauling and that kind of stuff, and like, I know when Molten Borough started, gosh, I think they brought us like, no joke, like 20 bags a week on a trailer when it started, and then it like reduced down to like 10 after like 6 months, and now it's like back up again because it's seasonal, like, you know, he brings us a trailer load every single week.
When we went down there for the first time, brought down, I think, 4 or 5, this carriage and gear lots full
Yeah.
of, where Molten Borough was in front, they were dropping off. This is who, Molten Borough, they must have had about 25 and 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said, okay, we'll get in there sometime.
Yeah, it's just shocking how much there is in your MSW, and like, and maybe you didn't get it before, I don't know, or you just don't realize how much there really was in trash bags. You know, I mean, people may have been stored in, you know, their basements and stuff, but it's just, I think the towns are shocked at how much they pull out, they're just like, oh my God, where's all this coming from? So, yeah.
Okay, I guess that's it then. Thank you for coming. And, make sure you keep your certificates so that, you know, no one can be asked to get that from you, okay?
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to that.